Blog Talk Radio.
All right, good evening, everybody, and welcome to Golf Talk Live. I'm your host, Ted Odorico. Got a great show for you tonight, and yes, we actually made it live on the air this week. My apologies for those of you that tuned in last week. Unfortunately, as I was just telling the guys here on the Coach's Corner panel, they're going to be coming on here in just a moment. We had a power issue last week. In fact, a couple of transformers with some of the bad weather we've had were blown in the area and knocked us out of power, so we weren't able to broadcast the show last week. But not to worry, the gentlemen that were scheduled last week, Pete Buchanan, James Kyle, and Buck Myers, are going to be on next Thursday, which is June 29th. They were able to clear their schedules and come back on. We will not have a Coach's Corner panel next week, however, but the guys will be coming on, and we'll continue that conversation that we were going to have last Thursday. But thank you for joining us this week. The sun's shining. The rain has seemed to have gone through, so everything looks like it's going to be smooth sailing here for at least the next few hours. We'll see what happens. But again, thank you and welcome to the show. We've got a great show tonight. Coach's Corner is going to be coming on here. We've got two great professionals, Jon Decker and Brandon Stooksbury. Of course, both have been on the show a few times now over the last year or so. And a great couple of guests. We're going to have an interesting discussion. A little bit later on the broadcast, I'm going to be joined by a good friend of mine and special guest. He hasn't been on the show for a little while, Bob Forman. He's the former director of fitness at Congressional Country Club and currently manages a medical center, a fitness center in Gastonia, North Carolina. And he's, of course, a certified golf fitness instructor, and we'll talk with him. He hasn't been on the show for a little while, but he reached out to me recently and indicated an interest in coming back on. So we're going to get caught up with him in the second half. For those of you just tuning in, obviously you found me here, but go to blogtalkradio.com/Golf Talk Live. Or just type Golf Talk Live up in the search key, and that will take you to the main page. The show is live from 6 to 8 p.m. Central or 7 to 9 for those of you on the East Coast. And for those of you that maybe can't tune into the live broadcast, just go to that link, blogtalkradio.com/Golf Talk Live. And if you scroll down to the on-demand section, you'll be able to listen to all of the previously aired shows, including tonight's. They're all auto-recorded. You can also find me at iTunes.com and Stitcher.com. Just go into the podcast section. And again, type in Golf Talk Live, and you can listen through those platforms as well if you're somebody that uses either Stitcher.com or iTunes.com. Feel free to speak with myself or any of the guests during the live broadcast. You can call in at area code 646-716-4667, or you're welcome to email me personally any questions or comments about the show at ted.golftalklive@gmail.com. And, of course, I update on social media, Facebook, and, of course, my Twitter handle, Ted and Buck, CEO. CEO is in capital letters. And thank you once again for all of the recent followers. Okay, so as I mentioned, we've got a great Coach's Corner panel. And I'm going to bring the guys on here in just a second. But let me tell you a little bit about each of them. Jon Decker, as I said, has been on the show before, both as a guest and has recently been coming on as a guest panelist. And he's the author of the book, Golf is My Life, Glorifying God Through the Game. Motivational speaker for Celebrate Sports Tour Foundation, and formerly the director of instruction for the new Albany Country Club up in New Albany, Ohio, as well as the head instructor for the Grand Cypress Academy of Golf in Orlando, Florida. Joining him tonight, of course, is Brandon Stooksbury, also been on as a guest and a regular panelist. He's the director of instruction at the prestigious Idle Hour Club in Macon, Georgia. He's been ranked in Golf Digest Best in State Instructor rankings for Georgia, and was honored in 2015 in the Central GA PGA Teacher of the Year. Specialized in competitive player development, enjoys teaching players of all levels from beginner right up to the PGA Tour. He's been a member of the PGA as a certified instructor for 11 years. Golf Digest ranked him Best Young Teacher. And the Golf Range Association of America also ranked him as a top 50 growth of the game teacher professional. And he's also received an honorable mention from U.S. Kids Top 50, been a 5-time PGA Award winner and best-selling author of The Wedge Book. And coming out this fall at some point, I'm sure he'll let us know when, is a follow-up book called The Putter Book. I've got The Wedge Book. It's a great book. I highly recommend you go and get that. And we'll get Brandon to let us know where you can get your hot little hands on that. And we'll get an update as to when the new book is coming out here sometime in the fall. So, guys, without further ado, let me welcome both Jon Decker and Brandon. Guys, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Ted.
Ted, always a pleasure, buddy. Thank you.
You're quite welcome. I appreciate it, guys. All right, as I was starting to say on the before we came on live on the air here on Coach's Corner, one of the things I want to talk about tonight is really 3 areas. We're going to talk about from a professional golfer standpoint, and then we're going to dive a little bit into junior golf, and then we're going to talk about some of our older golfers. Maybe 60 and above is a good range. So I want to talk about, and Jon, I'm going to go with you first if you don't mind, just to start things a little bit differently. As far as our pro golfers, of course, we just came off a U.S. Open. And what I want to ask you guys is this. From a professional standpoint, a professional player, do they prepare, in your opinion, or any that maybe that you've worked with, for a major championship like a U.S. Open differently than they would a regular event? What's your thoughts there, Jon?
Well, Ted, thanks for having me on the show. That's a great question. The mindset that you would like to have any player have is the fact that they treat every shot the same, they treat every tournament the same, and they don't put too much pressure on themselves, because I think that if they're playing their entire season, and especially if they're playing well, you don't want them to then all of a sudden try to force the issue. And it's just like in the game of life. You can't force things to happen. You have to kind of let things happen. So that's as a coach, that's what you would ideally like to see. But the reality of the situation is they do tend to put more emphasis on the majors. And the reason I think for that is you see it all the time. For example, the Masters, they're going there, they're flying in there, several weeks beforehand to get extra practice rounds in. So in reality, yes, they probably do put more emphasis in their practice time, in trying to get, especially because majors are switched around except for the Masters on different venues. So they're trying to figure out the golf course. They're trying to talk to other caddies. They're trying to, talk to other players who maybe have more experience. So there is probably, because of the fact that the venues are changing around, except for the Masters, in reality, yes, they are spending more time.
Yeah, I would agree with that as well. Brandon, what about your thoughts? I'm sure you probably agree a lot with what Jon has just mentioned, but I know you've worked with some high-caliber players as well. What's some of the dialogue that you have with them when they're coming up to a big event, if they've been fortunate enough to get into something like a U.S. Open or even a Masters? What's the mindset of some of our better players out there, our pro golfers?
Well, the mindset's an interesting topic. I mean, I totally agree with what Jon just said. I think in a perfect world, you would want to treat it the same as everything else, and it's actually a really common phenomenon out there for people to get over analytical or over hyped, or however you want to say it, about a major championship or major whatever, whether that's the conference championship in college or the Masters or the U.S. Open or whatever. People, kind of tend to get worked up over it, and it ends up having a negative effect on their performance. So I would say they probably should not do it. I might go a little bit different direction than what Jon went, and maybe better define what they're doing, because there's no question they spend more time, right? You hear about it all the time, and you hear about people flying, like Jon said, flying in or spending extra days.
Yeah. But
there's a couple of reasons I think that they do that, and I'm not sure they're really all that related to extra. Well, let me just tell you what they are, and then we'll go from there. Because the venues change, Jon brings up a good point. Because the venues change, there's not nearly as much information that the caddies and the players have as they do on other golf courses, right? For example,
right.
If you play, the Jacks tournament at Muirfield, right? It's been there for 50 years or however long it's been there. There are books upon books upon books, and the caddies know every putt, they know every twist, every turn, every carry yardage, all that stuff. And so they go into an event like that armed with a lot more information than they might go into, especially a U.S. Open, where the facility isn't, it's on a rotation that happens every, 6 or 8 or 9 years or whatever it is, and you never know what the USGA is going to do. You have no clue what they're going to do, right? And in modern day, they're starting to use some new stuff, right? So you saw it at Chambers Bay. You saw it at Erin Hills. I mean, nobody's got any information on any of those golf courses. And so all that stuff has to be done. So that's the first thing I would say that they're doing. The second I would say is that major championships traditionally have much tougher conditions than what you find week in and week out. And so they spend extra time there gaining experience to prepare them for the extra tough condition, right? So Augusta National, for example, has arguably the most challenging greens on the rotation all year. It's not that those guys maybe necessarily are spending extra time there because it's a major, but more because the conditions will be more challenging, so therefore they need extra time to prepare for what those conditions will be. And I think it's important to separate those two, right? Because one indicates a mental state of getting yourself worked up because it's a major. The other is quite the opposite. It's doing your due diligence to prepare because your game needs the extra preparation. And so I think you get a good mix of both. Certainly there are guys out there that over-prepare. That's a term I'll put in quotes, and get themselves worked up, for majors. And I think there are other guys that just do their due diligence. They want to make sure they spend enough time there to prepare themselves for the tough conditions they're going to play in. Yeah,
great points, both of you. And you're right, guys. If you look at a player like Phil Mickelson's example, and I know others do it as well, but, he's obviously, because of who he is, he's followed around a lot. He quite often, and, some of the other players I know have done it as well, as you said, will fly in sometimes weeks ahead of time of an event that they're scheduled to play in. So, and I remember a few years back, I think it was actually the year that Mickelson won. I'm not sure if it was the first Masters or the second, but that he literally went in a couple of weeks ahead of time and pretty much played every day, just to, as you said, Brandon, to sort of get familiar with the greens and the conditions and things like that. So obviously, as you said, they're doing their due diligence. So let's flip this over a little bit. So we get a general idea of how the pros, certainly a little bit of what they're thinking in the process that they're doing, and what the reason why they are maybe putting a little bit more, or certainly appears like they're putting more emphasis. So in the case of our club golfers or our high handicappers that maybe it's certainly not a major for them, but they've got their club championship or maybe a corporate event coming up, what do they know, I guess, from the professionals that the average player doesn't? What are some things that maybe they can take maybe note of that the professionals are doing that might help them to prepare for their event? John, I'll let you go first, and then Brandon again.
Well, I think the first thing is they need to obviously warm up properly. That is one thing that if the average golfer were, because I've been privileged to be out on the tour with tour player. I've been privileged to be at majors, and the one thing that I note that all those players do is they warm up, and they spend hours before their round, unless they have a 7:30 tee time. They spend hours before their round properly getting warmed up. Now, I realize that the average golfer can't do that, but at a bare minimum, they need to put in 30 to 45 minutes of warming up, putting, spending time on the putting green, chipping, hitting some bunker shots. That would be the first thing that I would say. The second thing is, quite frankly, is their diet during the round. I mean, if you're playing in the member guest and you're drinking a mixed drink every 3 holes, then you just need to go have a good time and play golf and forget about shooting a good score and forget about winning, and just go out and have a good time. So that would be something that I would really, if you're really there to compete and play well and play at your best, staying away from the alcohol, trying to eat properly, trying to not, I realize you're there to have it's a social event, and I know the night before, you may have a Calcutta or you may have whatever going on, a dance or whatever, but just being able to be properly rested. I mean, those are some common sense things, but I see it every year, at club events. I've been around member guests for 30 years, and I've seen all kinds of stuff. So I realize those are the type of things that I would try to shy away from if you're expecting to play good golf. If you're looking as far as your golf swing goes, I would recommend, like I've always said, that the students that do the best are the ones that take their lessons early in the spring or the winter, and then when they start getting into the summer, they take less lessons, maybe more playing lessons, and they try to gear themselves. You want to kind of peak towards your major. So if your quote-unquote major is the member guest, you want to peak towards that. You don't want to take a lesson the day before the member guest. You need to be taking your lessons like 2 weeks before the member guest so that you have time to kind of work on whatever your instructor is working with you on, and you can kind of play yourself into it. And then the last thing I would say is play golf. Don't just take a bunch of lessons and don't just spend a bunch of time on the driving range. Get out and play golf, because the more I play golf, usually the better my scores are in the long haul. If I play golf, once or twice a month, I don't play that well. So I can stand on the driving range and hit the ball and feel like my game is top notch, but you've got to be playing. So those would be some things that I would recommend for the average golfer.
Yeah, and that's, again, some great points, John. Brandon, I know you can probably piggyback a little bit on what John just mentioned here, but that's a great point. A lot of, and I'm sure we've all experienced it, some of our club members and club golfers that, want to come out the week before and suddenly want a lesson because their game isn't firmed up the way they want it to be, and they're expecting, miracles. So Brendan, what are some suggestions that you would have for some of our club or higher handicap golfers out there that maybe have a corporate outing or maybe their club championship is coming up sometime a little bit later on in the year? What do you suggest that maybe they do, that they can take some pointers, was the word I was looking for from the pros?
Well, our industry, like it or not, right or wrong, unfortunately our industry is far too often exactly what John's talking about. They come to my tee and they want to fix, right? I'm going to play Pebble Beach in the Pro-Am, I'm hitting my driver poor, fix me. I've got member guests coming up next week. I've been putting terrible all year, fix me. Give me a pointer, give me a tip. We all know it doesn't work that way. To be honest with you, a lot of them know that it doesn't work that way either. But they're hoping to glean any and everything they possibly can to maybe give them an edge. To a tour player, that means flying in 2 weeks early and putting 100 hours of preparation in. To our average amateur, that means taking a 1 hour golf lesson the day before. I get that. I understand that difference. Look, here's what I would say. That if I could maybe reword your question and then I'll answer it, right? If there was one thing I would tell you that the tour players do that the amateurs could very easily do with one round of golf, right? So what is that, 4.5 hours that they would most benefit from? Try to prepare and make a game plan for what you're going to do, right? Yep. And so the one thing that the amateur doesn't understand, and I say amateur, I mean, high-level college players don't get it. USGA, competitive adults don't get it. A professional doesn't make a swing at a golf ball that swing wasn't planned weeks, months, or sometimes even years before they make that swing. There is no in-the-moment decision-making for the most part. right? It's different if you're one shot,
Right.
if you're one shot behind with 2 to play, or something like that. But as a general rule, I'll bet if you picked up the phone and called Dustin Johnson right now and asked him what he hits on number 12 at Augusta, he would tell you on day 1, I hit this club, I'm aiming right here, and I'm trying to land it right there. And if you would tell you the same thing for the second shot on 13 and the same shot for the tee shot on 1 and for every other golf course he plays all throughout the year. Right? There are very, very few decisions made in the heat of the moment at the professional level, because those guys have planned out their round from the time they put the first ball in the air until the time they put the last ball in the hole. Now, I will give you that it's more challenging for an amateur to do that because they don't have the ball control that a professional has, right? And so it's fine for Dustin Johnson to stand on the first tee and say, I'm going to hit it down the left side of the fairway, and Mr. Smith might shank it into the woods on the right. Okay, that was a little unexpected, right? So now what's he do? But my point is they walk up to the hole and they go, oh, well, it's par 4, I better hit driver. And that's the extent of their preparation, right? And so watch those guys and understand from them that they know what they're doing before they ever walk up to it. And try to go play a practice round, right? Try to go to that course if you can and play with your buddies a week or 2 before and figure out what you need to hit on the 13th tee over the water on the par 3 so that you know going in and you can say, well, I'm hitting it really badly today. I might need to take an extra club instead of trying to figure that out in the heat of the moment. Prepare so that you don't have to rely on your judgment in the heat of the moment under pressure situations. That's what they can learn from the pros.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. And you're exactly right. The professionals, I would even take it a little bit further. Obviously mishaps can happen. Not that they make a lot of bad shots, but they certainly do make some bad shots, or circumstances arise that maybe they weren't expecting. But they always have some kind of a game plan. If they were planning on, as you said, on hole number 12, or hole number 13 or whatever the case may be to hit a certain club, and maybe it doesn't get the result, or a circumstance that was maybe beyond their control, maybe a gust of wind came up and blew it offline a little bit, they already know and have several different options in their mind planned ahead of time, as you said, to prepare for that, whereas you said that the amateurs just don't. The amateurs don't even have the first shot in their mind, and God help them if, as you said, if he shanks it in the woods, what does Mr. Smith do now? They haven't got a clue. And you're right. I think preparing, going ahead of time, not just going out in the range hitting balls, I mean, that certainly will give them a gauge, if you will, for how they're hitting it that day, and same thing with the putting green and other areas of the short game. But the truth of the matter is they, coming into, as you both pointed out, coming into an important round for them, they need to do more preparation. Not just ball striking skills and working on some of the other areas of the game, but putting a strategic plan together, how they want to play that round in their mind, and give themselves some options. Like you said, if they come up to a hole that maybe they're not sure if they can clear that water, or they can't clear a certain obstacle, they may have to take an extra club, or they may have to consider another option. Instead of pulling the driver out of the bag, maybe they're going to hit a hybrid off the tee, or something that they know they're going to be able to keep it in play. So have some options. I agree. That's some great points that you guys both made. I want to switch gears a little bit, and let's scale it back a little bit to junior golf. A couple of things. A question that I've been asked before, and that is, should we teach boys and girls the same? And most answers would probably be yes. Everybody should be taught the same. I want to know what you guys think and why you feel the way you do or don't feel the way you do. Brendan, take a deep breath because I know you just finished up. I'm going to let you go first, and then Jon.
Well, I don't have a problem talking, so I'll probably be okay. Here's what I would say, okay? I would tell you that I don't care if you're a girl, a boy, a man, a woman, an older person, a younger person, tall, short, fat, thin. Everybody needs to be taught in the way that makes the most sense to them. And I spent some time working for a great teacher in Jim McLean early in my career. And people always ask me, well, what did you learn working for a guy like that? And I'll tell you, I've told the story 100 times. I'll briefly tell it here. The most impressive thing I ever saw Jim McLean do is I spent a day with him when he had a large school. And so he had 5 to 7 people somewhere in that neighborhood that were in front of him for 4 to 6 hours in a day. And my job was to follow him and, really make sure he had water in his bottle to drink. And when he reached his arm back, I handed him the club he wanted. So my job wasn't very, detailed, but I did get to listen to him teach. And the most impressive thing I ever saw was he morphed into whoever he needed to be for the person that was in front of him in that moment. If he needed to be soft and encouraging, he did so. If he needed to be firm and demanding, he did so. If he needed to be quiet and say very little, he did so. If he needed to talk a lot, he did so. And it was incredible watching him move from person to person to person to person, completely changing how he communicated based on what they needed. And so do I think we need to teach boys and girls differently? Yes, but not because they're girls and boys, because they're their own individual person, right? And so a lot of times the girls tend to like softer instruction. I know that's a large generalization, right? But that tends to be the case. Boys tend to be a little scatterbrained, right? And you kind of have to keep them a little more engaged. At least that's the way it is here in the South. So maybe you can find some patterns that way, but I don't think I would go as far as saying, yes, you should teach girls different, and yes, you should teach boys different. I think you have to teach people different. And so I think it's important that you find out what that person needs, no matter their age, experience level, so forth and so on, and then deliver the information that way.
Yeah, that's a great point that you make, and a great example that you used with Jim McLean. I like the fact, and that is important. I think you do as an instructor. I don't care how long you've been in the business. I think you have to be able to adapt to the circumstances that are in front of you, the individual that's in front of you, and I think, unfortunately, and you kind of alluded a little bit, not specifically to this point, but about the industry in general. I think that one of the problems, and John, I'm going to let you jump in here real quick in a second, but I want to say this before I lose my train of thought. But I think one of the problems that has gone on for a long, long time, and it's not, I don't think it was done intentionally or certainly wasn't done in a malicious way or anything, but I think they tried to put everybody sort of in the same box. And I think they're starting to understand now that everybody is different. Not everybody learns the same way. Not everybody receives the information the same way. And I think really that's what you're trying to say, Brandon, in your approach. And I agree with you. I think that we can't be looking at a player and treating them differently because of their gender and just assume, because there are certainly some young ladies, up-and-comers on the Symetra Tour that certainly like a more aggressive approach in their instruction, and others that, as you said, maybe need a softer touch. So we have to look at the individual. John, I want to get your thoughts on here. I'm sure you probably agree with some of what Brandon's saying, but I'd like for you to add some thoughts as well.
Well, I'd love to. I think this is a great question. Junior golf is probably one of my favorite things to teach, and I've done thousands and thousands and thousands of camps in my lifetime and private lessons as well. And when I work with juniors, I present the information. Typically, you're doing a junior camp. You might have 6 to 10 people in front of you, and I'll present the information as a group, the fundamentals of the grip and the ball position and all the things for the posture all the way. So that stuff's not going to change. The ball position, whether you're male or female, you're not going to change. The grip's not going to change. Where you start dealing, and then I do a lot of drills. I try to create power with dynamic drills. I'm trying to create a lot of core rotation. I'm trying to create a lot of dynamic motion. And so I have found with a lot of the girls that I'm teaching now, they're quite frankly, a lot of them are more talented than the boys I'm teaching, at the younger ages, at the 6, 7, 8-year-olds. And because girls develop faster, And so I'll get
right.
an 8-year-old girl and an 8-year-old boy, and a lot of times the girls, I look at them and I go, they catch on a little faster, especially when I do a lot of balance drills with them, when I do a lot of drills where I'm trying to create a dynamic motion. A lot of these girls have dance backgrounds, and I found wow, they can do these core movements a little easier than the boys. When it comes to individuals, I basically feel like that I read people real well. My background was, at Grand Cypress, I was there for 20 years, and I had the pleasure of working with Fred Griffin, who was my director, who's a top 100 teacher, and also Phil Rogers, who's a top 100 teacher, who was a tour player and won 6 tour events. And I watched both of them teach, and Phil Rogers is like a drill sergeant. He is like a drill sergeant. He loves you to death, but he believes in getting his point across, and he pushes people. Fred's a lot more laid back. So I saw those styles, and then I had a chance to work with other instructors. And what I tried to do is I tried to take the best qualities of each one of those instructors and incorporate it into my own delivery. And then I tried to take my own strengths. I know my strengths. I know my weaknesses. I tried to take my own strengths, whether it's telling a story, whether it's telling a joke, whether it's being firm, whether it's pushing them, whether it's making them go and sit. I'll just tell a kid if he's acting up to go sit down. I don't put up with any BS when I'm out there. I mean, I'm pretty much, you're not going to disrupt this class because these parents are paying for this. So it's important, I think, as a teacher, to be able to, like Brandon says, to be able to look at each individual student and figure out what makes them tick. What am I going to say to this kid that's going to light a fire under him or inspire him or make him love the game or her love the game? So that's kind of that's my approach as far as dealing with the different personalities that you see with juniors.
Yeah, and I like that. Great answer as well, John. I agree in both cases. I think that, for a long time, we all understand there are differences between some advantages and some disadvantages going both ways. As you pointed out, John, a lot of the young ladies coming up, especially at certain ages, are far more flexible, have much better balance than many of the boys that we might be teaching. And they may not necessarily have the same physical strength in some cases, but they have other advantages in other ways. So, I think we have to look at the individual. And this sort of leads into the next question. And John, I'm going to let you jump back in here on this one here. And this really goes to a problem that we've all, I'm sure, have heard at some point or maybe even experienced a little bit. But the question is this: is there too much pressure on some of the junior golfers? And I'm talking about, and I'll give you a couple of scenarios. The more skilled junior golfer that maybe there is some potential there to maybe carry it to the next level, whether it be collegiate or even beyond. And then maybe those golfers that maybe, junior golfers that maybe aren't that as skilled at this point. Are we putting too much pressure, and are some of the expectations unrealistic in their performance? And I want you to tackle this, guys, from both the parents' perspective, or in other words, are the parents, maybe pushing their children sometimes too hard and not letting it, develop naturally, and then also even from the coaches or instructors' side. Is there times, and I know you both kind of answered a little bit in your previous answer to the question, but from a coaching standpoint or a teacher professional standpoint, do we need to be mindful of that as well? John, I'll let you go, and then Brandon, I want you to follow up.
Well, this is a great question. First of all, I'll start out by saying that I'm not a parent. I do not have children, so it's a lot easier for me to say these things, because I don't have that perspective. If I had children, I might have a different perspective. I love children. Here's my recommendation to the parents, okay? And I'll try to put myself in the parental situation here, is if you're dropping your son or daughter off to take a lesson, I think that it's nice to spend maybe 5 minutes at the end of the lesson watching the lessons, but I do not believe that the parents need to sit there and watch the entire lesson as it goes on, because I think it puts too much pressure on a lot of kids, unless they're really, even if they're a better player. I think because I remember playing, I used to love it when my parents would come watch me play sports. But when you're getting instruction, it's almost you don't want to feel like, because if someone doesn't do it right, I'm going to say you didn't do it right. But then you don't need the parent to chime in, and it happens every time. Anytime someone else corrects a child, the parent wants to jump in and reinforce it. And I'm like, you just repeated the exact same thing I said. I don't need that. We don't need an echo. So I would recommend for most parents, drop your child off, let them do the lesson, then come in at the very last part and then talk to the instructor, get the feedback, what did we work on, those types of things. That's much better. I don't like it when the parent drops them off, sits in their car, waits till they come out, and then does that, because then that shows a lack of interest. If I was a kid, I would want to have my parents there for a little bit of the time. But as far as the instruction goes and the pressure, I try to be completely honest with every single child I work with. Every single child I work with, I try to be like Bob Rotella is like, I want to be an enlarger. I want to give that child a sense that if he or she really works on their game, the sky's the limit. They could get a scholarship to college. They could play on the high school golf team. They might even one day be a professional golfer. I always try to put that out there to kids, because I have had kids who you would look at them as a 9 or 10-year-old and go, there's no way that this kid would ever, is going to be that great of a player, and they turn out to be one of the best players on the high school golf team because they persist, they're persistent and they work at it. So I always try to be an enlarger. I never, if a kid came to me and tells me, my dream is to play on the PGA Tour, I say, you're the kind of student I like to work with, and let's start working now. But here's what you're going to have to do, and then you just keep pushing them from there. So I think from those perspectives, that's kind of the way I look at it. And again, it's easy for me to say because I'm not a parent.
Right, and I'm the same as you, John. I obviously don't have children either, so there's a little bit of a difficulty on that aspect from the parental side of relating. So I can appreciate that, but you handled it very well. Brandon, what about you? Again, from parental, I think sometimes we get, and I hate to use this term, but helicopter parent, as John was sort of alluding to, where they're hovering over the child and they're stepping in and getting involved. Or a lot of times maybe they're interfering in the coaches or instructors' lesson by trying to, maybe push their child a little bit harder because they're wanting to see faster results. So they're kind of interfering in the transition between instructor and student. And then also, what should and shouldn't, in your opinion, the instructors be doing? What should they be looking for? What signs should they be looking for from their student to know when it's okay to step on the throttle a little bit more and move, progressively down the track, or when they need to scale it back a little bit because maybe they're putting too much pressure on that child. So sort of the same question, but maybe a little bit different approach.
Yeah, this is a tough one. I really struggle with this one. I am both a parent as well as an instructor who teaches camps and golfers, or kids spread across all kinds of different levels. The challenge, I think, is in trying to teach kids in the wrong, that are there for a different reason than maybe what the parent wants them to be there for, or what you think they are there for. Up until a kid is 16 or 18 years old, the parent pretty much does everything for them. And what I mean for that is the parent usually arranges a lesson or a camp. The parent pays for it. The parent drives them. The parent buys them the necessary equipment or sunscreen or hat or, whatever. And far too often I see kids that are on my lesson tee or in a camp we're running or whatever, because the parent wants them to get better and the kid has absolutely no desire at all to be better. The kid is there either to just have fun or they're really not interested in the game, but the parent wants them to get up and get outside because they're playing too many video games. Rarely do I see the kid that John's talking about that comes into me and says, I want to play the PGA Tour. Now, you get that a lot when they're 15, 16, 17, 18 years old, but I don't get that from a lot of kids. And so I think you have to be very, very careful as an instructor to not try to do something for the kid that the kid doesn't want. Because inevitably what that leads to is the kid at some point being picked up by the parent, and when the parent asks them the very first question that every single parent always asks the kid when they pick them up, no matter what they've done, is, did you have fun? Eventually that question, the answer to that question is going to be a no or a hesitation or a kind of so-so answer. And at that point, it's over.
Right.
And then so I think it's okay to push. I played a lot of sports as a kid. I don't ever remember a basketball coach being nice in practice. Ever.
No.
And I'm not saying they were mean, but I mean, nobody sat me down and patted me on the head and said, it'll be okay, son. Nobody did that, right? And so, yes, times have changed, but I mean, if you want to be a champion golfer or a champion athlete, champions are born from both fire and water. And so I think if they really want to do that, at some point, they have to be pushed, whether they push themselves or you push them. Again, I don't mean being mean. That's not what I mean, but at some point they have to be pushed to get better. And I just think you have to be real careful to read those signs to make sure that the kid is there for the reason the parent is telling you the kid is there, because that doesn't always add up. The last thing I'll say is that as a parent, I am totally agree with John, except I might even take away the last 5 minutes. I don't think you ought to be involved at all. I think you ought to hire the right coach, no matter whether it's physical training in John's case or, golf training or basketball or football. I think you need to hire the right coach, and I think you need to get out of the way. Because I think that has to be a very different relationship between the coach and the parent. The parent is there to encourage and tell the kid that they love them and that they're proud of them, and the coach is there to teach them the sport. And I think it is really challenging when those two try to mix, right? When the parent tries to teach, and oftentimes when the coach tries to be the parent. Works a little bit better that way than it does the other way. But I totally agree with John. Get out of the way, drop them off, go to the grocery store, go work out, go watch a movie, whatever you need to do. I'll see you in the parking lot when they're done. You can ask them if they had fun. The answer is going to be yes, and they'll come back next week, right? And if you want to talk to me privately about what we're doing, I have no problem with that. If the parent wants to inquire, well, what are you teaching my son or daughter? I'm happy to have that conversation, right? But that conversation's either over a phone or it's in my office away from the tee so that I can explain to you what we're doing. And when your son or daughter is in our program, they're there to learn, right? And so anyway, I'm a big fan of the parent staying out of the way. That might come off as rude. It might come off as boastful or pushy or whatever, but I just don't think that works well when the parent is involved. I totally agree with John on that one.
Yeah, and I would concur with that as well. And I'm sure we've all maybe heard some, some horror stories, if you will, and I hate to use that terminology, but, the parents, think that their child is going to be the next, major player, and there's just a tremendous amount of pressure. And I think that we as instructors, coaches, what have you, I think have a responsibility sometimes not to, and the reason why I say horror stories, I mean, I've literally talked to kids who really want nothing to do with golf. At one time, they wanted to, they had aspirations to play, but the pressure that was put upon them was so great that it actually turned them off the sport. And it wasn't because the coach had done anything wrong. It was because the parents were pushing them at such a level. And I think where the coach needs to be respectful to the child and say, look, this is not for me. I can't work in this circumstance, because I think sometimes even the coaches, they don't want to lose business. They want to have the opportunity to teach somebody, especially if they've got talent. But I think if they see a scenario, it's a very awkward situation, because you don't want to discourage the kid or push them away, but at the same time, you can see the deck of cards about to unfold at some point down the road if things aren't handled in a certain way, as both of you just pointed out. Great answers, by the way, guys, both of you. I like that. And the reason why I wanted
Ted,
yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry, Ted. Let me just add one quick thing here. I don't see it nearly as often as the other one, but parents can be too encouraging too.
Sure.
And so every now and then you get a parent that takes that to the wrong level. I mean, I have a kid just yesterday. We just had our Georgia Junior, the state junior amateur here in Georgia, the highest ranking tournament for an amateur junior. And we have a kid at the club who's a really good player, probably going to play Division I collegiate athletics at some point. He's got a couple years left, so he's a sophomore. Played really good golf. He's averaging 73 and some change, 74 in 36-hole or more stroke play events. So he's playing some really good golf. And he's at the Georgia Junior, and I'm getting texts from his dad. And he plays horribly. I mean, he makes a triple bogey, follows it up with a double bogey, hits one in the bushes, gets mad, and he brings him to the learning center after the tournament to practice, right, as if that's going to fix it. And the kid's telling me about it. And the dad keeps interrupting, saying, "Oh, it's okay, son. It's okay. It was a tough day." And I finally just looked at the dad, who I know very well, and I said, it's not okay. He just played horribly.
Right.
Like, he played far worse than his ability level should have allowed him to play. Don't brush this off as if it's okay, and he just had a bad day on a bad golf course or on a tough golf course under tough conditions. Your kid sucked it up. He played terribly. And the kid needs to own that, right? Because there's just as much of a lesson in overcoming that as there is overcoming other pieces of adversity. And so I think as a parent, if parents are listening out there, I'll go one step farther and say your job is to encourage, but don't take that too far either.
Yeah, and I think the child, and what a lot of people, I think this is not just the child, but I think we're all guilty of this, both experiencing it in our own lives sometimes, especially early on as we develop. You have to learn how to fail as well as learning how to win, because I think a lot of parents are afraid, especially in this day and age, afraid of their child failing at something. We all can't be good at everything, and we learn the most valuable life lessons through our failures, not through our wins and our accomplishments, but it's through the failures in life, because it gets into the core of our soul, if you will. And I think you're exactly right, Brandon. I think a lot of parents try to brush that over. And I don't mean that you have to beat up on the kid and make them feel worse than they always do, but I think you have to be honest with them and saying, look, you sucked today and it wasn't good, and here are some of the things. And then talk about it with the child. Let the child, sort of open up and talk about why they think they didn't play well, and not just, I shot a bogey or triple here or what have you. They need to own it, as you said. And I think, unfortunately, you're right. I think that sometimes parents get a little bit too much, the other way, and can be a little bit too encouraging, and then it's not realistic, because then when, little Johnny or what have you goes through that same scenario again, next year, they're not equipped to handle it, and they're looking for that affirmation, even though they stunk again next year. So you have to be encouraging. You're right, Brandon, to a point, but I think you also have to be honest and realistic and I think the child has an opportunity to learn from the mistakes they may have made that day out in the course. Guys, I got to move this along a little bit because we're getting close to our time here in a little bit. So I want to move into the older golfers, and I'm going to single out the 60-plus golfers because we get quite a few of those tuning into the show as well. And there's really two questions I want to ask. There's actually three, but I'm going to roll two of them together. And John, I'm going to jump back to you here real quick. Are they spending, and I'm talking about our senior golfers, are they spending too much time trying to perfect at this stage of their life? And I'm not trying to insinuate that it's over, but they're trying to perfect their swing and not really spending enough time where it counts, like the short game. So what specifically can some of our senior golfers out there do to better their scores? And then, Brandon, I'll let you jump in as well.
Well, number one is they have to check their ego at the door, and they have to move up in tees. That's one of the biggest mistakes I see. I'm 50, and the fact that we're now terming 60-year-olds as old golfers scares me because that means I'm getting closer to it. But the way I look at it is I've always played the back tees, and I have no problem now moving up a set of tees. I have no problem at all. And I've had this discussion with my father, and you want to go out and enjoy the game, and the bottom line is you've earned that right. That's the way you have to look at it. You've earned it. I mean, it's just like if somebody came up to me and wanted to give me a pay raise, I would take it. By moving up, that's one of the first ways, because the most common thing I hear from the senior golfer, and really all golfers, is I don't hit it far enough. I hear that all the time. So moving up will help in that regard. And then I would say really working on your game from about 60 yards in, because if you don't have that part of your game, you're not going to be getting to the par fours a lot into. So you're going to need, and the par fives and threes. So you're going to need that 60-yard game and then, spending more time on that. And most people, when they're playing the wrong tees, they think, well, I need to hit the ball farther. So they work on their driver all the time, when really they could solve the problem by moving up in tees and then working on, if they still can't get it there, working on their short game. And whenever you work on your short game, it really helps your full swing, but it also helps your scoring. It's the best way. The pitching, I've always said, the best way to work on your game is working on your pitching, because your scoring will improve, but it has the same sequence as the full swing. So I think those are two simple things that would help. And the last thing I'd say from an equipment standpoint is check with your pro. Make sure that you have the right shafts in your. You may need to go to a weaker shaft or graphite, or put an extra hybrid in there to help you out with your scoring overall. Those would be some recommendations I would make.
Yeah, well said. And just on a side note, John, I'm 53, going to be 54 next year, so I'm going to hit that 60 benchmark before you do. So I'll let you know how it is when I get up there.
All right,
Brandon, I know. Brandon, I know that you, have a lot of experience in the short game. I've read your the Wedge book, and you got a lot of great tips in there. But this is, Clint Wright, who's been on the show many, many times, and Brandon, I know you've been on. I think, John, you were on as well with him.
Yeah.
He really does well in the short game. And he said something very interesting here a couple of weeks ago. He was on the show, and we talked a lot about the short game. And he got into a discussion, and I want you to sort of pick up on this a little bit and maybe share some thoughts. But, he talked about really benchmarking your putter. And what he was meaning by that, I don't know if you had a chance to hear that, but, he said a lot of things that people – a lot of our golfers out there struggle with is hitting things, as an example, like lag putting. They don't know how far they lag it. So in other words, they don't know how far to putt 20 feet or 30 feet. So when they're putting, they're trying to guess at it all the time. And what he suggested for a lot of golfers out there, and I think this is a super idea, is, as an example, get into your posture, get into your stance and that for your putt, and take the club head back to about your right toe on your right foot for the right-handed golfers out there, and hit the putt, and then go and pace it off so you know how far it went, and maybe do 2 or 3 examples of that and kind of get an average of it. And I think that's a fantastic idea, because I don't know how many times I see, whether it be in a Pro-Am or just at any facility, and I see a lot of amateurs out there, and they're working on their 3-foot putts, which is good, but they have no idea. And how many times we've seen some of these amateurs out there that get 30, 40, 50 yards away from the hole, that they have no idea how hard they need to swing that putter in order to get it up that even close to the hole. So talk a little bit about, from your standpoint, what you recommend some of our older golfers do, and what your thoughts on what I just said.
Well, I don't think older golfers are to do that. I think all golfers are to do that. I think speed control and putting is probably one of those things that nobody ever thinks about, that no great player on earth ever went without. And so I totally agree with Jon. Actually, the answer to your original question, what should they do, is probably go see Jon. And figure out how to move again, right? But in the absence of that obvious answer,
I like that answer.
I agree. Yeah, I totally agree, right? I think the short game is a place where they can get a lot of gain, if for no other reason than this: it doesn't require the movement that the full swing requires. As you age, your body breaks down. As you spend a career sitting in a chair, typing, or bent over a dentist chair, or whatever you've done that has made all your muscles and tendons and tight and don't move very well because we don't stretch and we don't eat right and we don't work out, all that jazz. Short game is the one area where you put the least amount of pressure on all those parts of your body that aren't as mobile or stable as they used to be. And so you can get far more gain as a senior golfer out of time spent improving in that area than you ever can trying to hit it farther. Because at the end of the day, hitting it farther only is going to add up to about 10 or 15 yards anyway, which means that instead of hitting a 5-iron, you're swinging a 6-iron, and you still only hit 25% of your greens in regulation. And so I don't think they quite understand the metrics when it comes to what getting better or maintaining a level of play, what's involved in that. I agree with Jon. I think they play tees that are too far back, so they think they need to hit it farther. A lot of them really don't need to hit it farther. They might need to hit it a little straighter or a little better. When I say better, I mean more solidly. But they don't really need to hit it farther. They just play in the wrong tee. Let me tell you something. For all you people that are listening out there, you're not supposed to hit 3-wood into par 4s. The game wasn't designed to be played that way, right? You're supposed to have a 7-iron in your hand, maybe a 5-iron on 1 or 2 long ones, but you're not supposed to be ripping 3-wood into par 4s. That's just not how it's supposed to be. So if I got 3-wood in my hand on a par 4, of course I think I need to hit it farther. But that's not the problem, right? And so I absolutely agree. I think you got to check your ego. I think you got to play the right tees. There is a fantastic chart that exists out there. I don't know who designed it or who developed it, but they should be given a medal that talks about how far you should play the golf course based on how far you carry your driver. So, for example, if you carry your driver, 180 yards or 200 yards, then you should be playing a golf course that has this length, right? I think that's a fantastic chart that should be shouted from the rooftops by every piece of golf media on this planet, so that we can start to educate folks on how far they're really supposed to be playing. And then I agree, go be a great putter. Go learn how to be a good putter, how to be a good chipper, and how to be a good wedge player, because you don't have to have 25-year-old movement patterns to be able to be good at those things. You can be a fantastic putter if you can just move your shoulders, right? And so, I mean, everybody needs to heed that advice because everybody's got a putt, but I think it's even more important and apparent to someone who is aging because their return on investment will be far greater there than it will be in making full swing motions, which, quite frankly, a lot of times their body can't support anyway.
Yeah, and that's a great point. And you guys both actually answered the other question I had was, but we're out of time, was does distance really matter? And I think really the answer to that is, as you both indicated, is to move up. The reason why I wanted to mention that and why I wanted to give a little shout out to Clint was, he raised a very valid point, and I'm going to close on this, and I'm going to give each of you a real quick opportunity before I jump into the next segment of the show, because I know, Jon, you're still out there promoting your book, and Brandon, I know you've got a new book coming out here a little bit, so I just want to give you an opportunity to talk about that when we can get our hot little hands on that one. But the reason why I said that is, a lot of people don't understand, as Clint pointed out, and I know all of you agree, is they don't understand the percentages of their game. In other words, the percentage of hitting the long ball and number of strokes in most rounds is very low. It represents maybe a dozen to 14 shots, and I'm talking about driver, off the tee, and that sort of thing. Putting represents, on average, about 43% of your game. And then if you add in short game wedge and things like that, it's probably at least 60 to 65, if not more, percent of the shots that you play in any round. I don't care what you score. And it just kind of baffles the mind that the majority of our higher handicap golfers are spending their time practicing the area of their game that they're lucky if 15% of their round is going to accomplish anything, and yet the 60 or 70% or whatever, the rest of the game, as Jon, you pointed out, the short game, they're not spending hardly any time on that. So to sort of sum up what you both said, get out there and work on the short game. Work from, even 75 yards and in. Work on your chipping. Work on your putting for sure. Step off your lag putts. Don't sit there and just try to aim for the cup all the time. Get on one side, on a practice green and just putt it along, and then pace it off. Look at where the club head swung back to, and do 2 or 3 shots that same momentum and that same distance, and pace them off. And so that you have an idea that when you get up around a putt and you pace it off and it's in that range, you know how far to take back the putter head. And a lot of people don't. If you watch most of the amateurs out there, they haven't got a clue. So get out there and work on some of these things that we've talked about here tonight on the Coach's Corner panel. And I guarantee, especially some of our senior golfers out there, forget about trying to get 10, 15, 20 extra yards with your driver. Move up a tee box. Work on, as Brandon mentioned, work on hitting it maybe more solidly if you're having some issues there. But forget about trying to get 10 or 15 or going out and spending $200-300 on another driver. Make sure the equipment you have is properly fitted for you, that not just the length and the lie, but to make sure that you're not playing shafts that are obsolete for your game right now. You may have to make some changes. Guys, thank you, as always, for coming on. Very interesting discussion tonight. Jon, I know you're still got your on the road here and there for the book. If somebody is interested in getting a copy of your book, Golf is My Life, Glorifying God Through the Game, where can they go to get a copy?
The book is available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble websites, but I would suggest that you go to my website. It's jondeckergolf.com, and I spell my first name Jon, so it's jondeckergolf.com. I have you can order the book right there off the website. I've got videos, instructional videos on there as well, and my book tour schedule. And my email address, if you want to contact me. Again, the name of the book is Golf is My Life, Glorifying God Through the Game. Thanks for having me on the show, Ted, and Brandon, great job.
Perfect. And Brandon, I know you've got the wedge book out there. Obviously, folks want to get that, but when can we expect the putter book? When's that going to be wrapped up?
Yeah, it's a little too late to give you a definitive date. I'm shooting for October 1. Will be what I hope, but the wedge book and it's available on my webpage as well as Amazon, similar to Jon. My web address is bsgolf.com would be the easiest way to get there, and don't anybody laugh before I hear any at the URL, but bsgolf.com is the best way to get it. I've done some videos recently with a couple of guys that are good friends of mine through a company called Athletic Motion Golf. that go along with the wedge book, and so make sure and check out their website, just athleticmotiongolf.com, for some live video stuff of the wedge book as well. But thanks so much for having me on the show, Jon. I can't wait to read your book, and you know, always a pleasure being on with you.
I enjoyed it. Great job, Brandon. Thank you very much.
Well, guys, as always, thank you for, as I said to you earlier on, thank you for giving of your time. I appreciate it. I know it's not always easy, and sometimes schedules conflict, but I appreciate you guys giving of your time. Great discussion tonight. You guys, as always, did a fantastic job here on the Coach's Corner panel. Love having you guys on board, and I look forward to the next time. And Brandon, keep us updated on as we get closer when the book is available, and we'll let the folks know here. But have a great weekend, guys. Thank you as always, and I look forward to next time.
Thanks,
Ted.
All right. And that was my very special guest on the Coach's Corner panel, Jon Decker and Brandon Stooksbury. And my apologies to my next guest, Bob Forman. I think I just cut him off. So, Bob, if you're listening, dial back in, and I promise I'll get you on. But in the meantime, while I'm waiting for him to do that, I'm going to just to read out some information. And actually, here he is. Let me just put him in queue here, and then I'll read out the information. My apologies, Bob. As I mentioned earlier in the show, my very special guest on the second half of the show, he's been on the show a number of times in the past. Hasn't been here for a little while, and he reached out recently, and we communicated, and I invited him back. He's the former director of fitness at Congressional Country Club, and currently manages a medical fitness center in Gastonia, North Carolina. He's a certified golf fitness instructor through the Titleist Performance Institute, and a certified personal trainer through the American College of Sports Medicine, and certified in applied functional science through the Gray Institute. Brings to the table a master's degree in exercise physiology and 35 years plus working in the fitness field, and definitely has a passion for the game of golf. We'll talk a little bit more about how you can get a hold of Bob, but let me bring him back on here before I cut him off. My very special guest, Bob Forman.
Hey, Ted,
welcome back, Bob.
Yeah, thanks.
I'm
thanks
doing
for
very well.
Back.
Not a problem. My apologies for cutting you off. I was just closing off with the other two gentlemen, and I accidentally cut you as well. So my apologies, but thanks for calling right back in. As I was just telling everybody, of course, Bob, I know you've been on many, many times in the past, and I know you've been really, busy in your own journey through the fitness and other things and that. And we haven't had you on the show for a while, so when you had reached out recently, I thought I want to get Bob back on here. I always enjoyed our conversations. So catch us up. What's been happening a little bit, and then we'll get into some questions.
Well, let's see. Currently, I'm down here in Gastonia, North Carolina, as you mentioned, managing a medical fitness center for a hospital, Caramount Health, and it's good to be back in the medical fitness field. Start a little golf fitness academy out of the fitness center, so that's going well, doing some workshops in the area here and working with the various golfers. Was up at Congressional for a couple of years running their fitness program, and we did a lot in terms of establishing and growing the golf fitness component. We even took the stuff that we do with golfers and we started to work with the tennis players as well, because a lot of this, the muscle imbalance, muscle deficiencies, swing mechanics are very similar between golf and tennis, so we started building that program too. But it's been good. We're doing good.
Yeah, and one of the things that we've always, I've always enjoyed talking about, Bob, with you on the show is, really about what a lot of the folks out there, want to improve their game. They're always looking, at the equipment, thinking, well, if I just get that new driver, or if I just maybe get a new set of clubs with a different shaft, and that's going to fix everything. And a lot of times it can be zeroed back to their fitness level or lack of. And, you've always done a great job on the show about talking about some of the areas that, and we're going to talk about that here in a second, but I want to just let everybody know, if you're interested in learning a little bit more about Bob. We're not going to get into that part of it right here on the show because we've got some great questions that he's going to answer for us here. But go to his website, golffitcarolina.com. He's got a lot of great articles and videos on there that are related to golf fitness. So after the show, I want you to stick around and listen to Bob right now. But after the show, I want you to go and visit his website, www.golffitcarolina.com, and it's GOLFIT Carolina.com, and you can also reach out to him, and his email is bob@golffitcarolina.com as well. He's also been featured on Golf Week and has made some regular appearances on radio and podcasts as well, and as I mentioned, he's been on my show a number of times in the past. He's been featured in the Maryland and Carolinas Golf Association magazines as well, so he's been all over the map, lots of great information. So let's get right into some of the things that we're going to talk about tonight, Bob, since I've got you here to kind of pick your brains, if you will. Let's talk about the golf posture. Unlike a lot of sports, you always hear about the athletic position, have that athletic. But obviously as golfers get older particularly, they lose a lot of that posture. It starts to get slumped over, as maybe you might have heard in the earlier segment. And a lot of the muscles that traditionally people rely on to get in that good golf posture start to weaken or get stiff or tighten or whatever. So first off, talk about the process of evaluation that you do to sort of assessment, if you will, and then what you try to encourage some of the folks that you're working with, especially those that are playing golf, what they can do to improve that posture.
Well, yeah, for the most part, golf posture is kind of a visual. You just kind of take a look at the golfer when he's standing at address over the ball, and you can tell right away whether he is in one of three postures. And you have an end posture, which is the posture we all want to try to get, and that's with a straight spine up and down from the head down to the tailbone. And then you have, what you alluded to, the C posture, or the bowing of the spine, the curvature of the spine, so that the golfer kind of looks like a C when you look at him from the side. And that's becoming more prevalent today. It used to be an older golfer's disease, but starting to see a lot of younger golfers in the C posture, and it's related to the fact that we're sitting, rounded shoulder in front of computers. We're on cell phones a lot, so we kind of get into this, like I say, rounded shoulder posture, and the body adapts to that over a period of time, and that just won't bode well for your golf swing at all. And then the third posture, which is prevalent more in women and in younger golfers, is what's called an S posture, and that's kind of categorized by a swaying of the lower back, and that swaying of the lower back will just tear up the lower back over a period of time. So out of the three, we really want to try to strive for a nice straight spine. In the case of the C posture, which is becoming kind of an epidemic in golf, it's characterized, it's correlated to a tightness of the muscles across the front part of the chest and shoulders, and a weakness in the muscles in the upper back, because again, the shoulders are kind of pulled forward. The shoulder blades, the scapula kind of rise up a little bit on the body. And, not only will that not bode well for your golf swing, because you just can't rotate around a curved spine as well as you can a straight spine. So it's going to impact that number one power move, and that's making a good shoulder turn in the golf swing. But it will also set you up for things like shoulder impingement and stuff. So three areas that that you definitely want to take a look at and determine which posture you are, and then take steps to correct those postures.
Yeah, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. I know obviously we don't have the benefit of the visual aspect, and that's why I want them to go to your website after the show and take a look in more detail some of what we're going to be talking about tonight. There's some, as I said, some great articles, some great video there as well that they can get a little bit more in depth. But Bob, talk about just, let's talk about the C posture a little bit more. And what are some things that we all, as you mentioned, it's not just the older folks out there that are experiencing, even some of the younger ones. And you hit it right on the head. in this day and age, a lot of people are sitting behind their computer or at a desk, and they're kind of slumped over in their workstation. And as you said, the chest muscles kind of tighten up, and then the back or up in the shoulder area kind of loosen up, and it creates that sort of a C posture. So is there some exercise, or are there some things that the folks can do out there that they're not going to have to spend necessarily a lot of time in the gym, or something maybe they can do at home, but maybe they can do to sort of reverse that? Is there something they can do?
No, definitely, and they can correct that fairly quickly if they are pretty aggressive at doing the exercises. The first is you always got to stretch out the tightness. So we need to stretch out the muscles across the front, the chest, and the shoulders. So a real simple and a real effective stretch that you can do is a door frame stretch. Just kind of find yourself a door frame, stand in the door frame, and put your arms up on the door frame so that your upper arms are parallel to the floor, and your forearm is up against the frame itself. And then what you want to do is just slowly lean into the door frame till you feel a gentle stretch across the chest and shoulder area, and then just hold that for about 15 seconds or so. Ease back off the stretch, and then do that, 2 more times, so that again you're isolating, the flexibility, stretching out those muscles across the chest and shoulder. Opposing that, when you get into that rounded shoulder posture, you elongate the muscles in the upper back, so you need to strengthen those muscles to kind of pull everything back to the midline of the back, the spine. So a good exercise is to get yourself a piece of exercise tubing, the elastic tubing with handles on each side. Wrap it around an anchor point, something solid that is immovable. And then grab each handle, step back so that you have a little bit of tension on the bands, and put your arms out in front with your palms down and arms outstretched. And then what you want to do is just pull back on the tubing, keeping the elbows up and away from the body as opposed to close to the body. When you bring the elbows up and away, you're isolating those muscles in the upper back known as the rhomboids. And if you do that back and forth in a nice, slow, steady fashion, and as you pull back, you should feel those shoulder blades squeeze together. And that, when you do that, you're isolating those muscle groups. So you do about 15 to 20 reps of those. And again, if you perform those 2 exercises on a pretty regular basis, you can kind of work on that posture and correct that posture.
Yeah, and let me just add real quick here. Bob, I know that you're a certified fitness instructor, so I know that you've got everything 100%. But let me just sort of add a little disclaimer in here. Obviously everybody's different, and I want to make sure that the folks that are listening here, they really should, connect with somebody like yourself, and we're going to tell them again how they can do that, to really make sure that they're doing these exercises properly, number one. But also making sure that they're doing them in the appropriate way, because I think sometimes people try to rush, and I'm sure you've seen this, Bob, where you talked about the rubber band and that with the handles. Most of the sporting goods stores carry something like that. They have different strengths, different tensions and that. You want to make sure, just like you would with weights, you want to make sure that you're not, you want something to offer a little bit of resistance, but you also want to make sure that you're not doing something that's, a little bit too difficult for you. So start off gradual and kind of work up a little bit, because you're not looking to bulk up, you're not looking to do that, you're looking to stretch those areas and loosen other areas in order to correct that posture, in perfection, if you will. So I want to make sure that the folks listen to that don't just go out and start, what I'm saying? I want to make sure that they listen to what you're saying and not just sort of go out. So, Bob, I know that on your website, golffitcarolina.com, they can go and see a lot of these different things that we're going to be talking about on there. Make sure that they're viewing it correctly, but also make sure that they reach out to somebody that's certified like yourself in this area, so they're not doing things that could potentially injure them. Go ahead. You were going to add something?
Yeah, no, that's correct, and I think the key there also is when you do find somebody that is certified, make sure that they do put you through some sort of physical screen so that they can identify where your muscle deficiencies are and your weaknesses and imbalances. Because and everybody's got them. I mean, I've tested hundreds of golfers over the years, some tour players all the way down through juniors, and everybody's got deficiencies. I have yet to take somebody through and have them pass every single mini assessment. And it's nothing labor intensive, but it's crucial to identify where those deficiencies are. And I mean, I've had this discussion with my medical physiologists, that this is something we probably should put everybody through, because it's these deficiencies and these imbalances in the body that create misalignment in the body that lead to aches and pains and eventually arthritis, and that just leads up to shoulder replacement, knee replacement, hip replacement. So it's really important to, keep balance within the musculoskeletal system, and that's really, a priority, and really what a good golf assessment can do, a TPI assessment can do. So, yeah, it's important to find somebody who's certified, who knows what they're doing, and because it's not only your better golf game, but it's your livelihood that you're talking about.
Yeah, and the reason why I say that, and I've had these discussions on the show before with some of my fellow golf professionals. I mean, I'm not a certified fitness instructor, and I can certainly give some tips and things like that, but that's not where my expertise is. My expertise is in the area of golf instruction. So, and many of my fellow pros, of course, align themselves or work with somebody such as yourself, and I've had others on the show as well in your field. So we want to make sure that you're going to the right source, because we certainly don't want you to go out and do something that's going to injure or create further problems. So definitely seek out somebody that's experienced in this field, and don't just read a bunch of stuff on the internet. Make sure that the person actually has the proper certifications before you do that. I want to talk about something as well, and then we're going to kind of have a little bit of fun here. A common question we get, and I know obviously it's not equipment can play a factor, but a lot of golfers ask me, and I'm sure you hear it a lot in some of your dialogues. They all want to know is, why am I losing distance? Obviously, as we get older, certain things and change in our bodies. But what's kind of the real reason? It's not, people think that, well, I've lost some muscle mass and I've lost this. I'm not as strong as I used to be. But really, strength does not have anything to do with hitting the ball far. There's a lot of other factors involved. In your opinion, based on your experience, what's some of the common causes that a lot of golfers out there are losing distance from a physical standpoint?
Well, definitely number one, without a doubt, is a lack of flexibility and range of motion. Very key to powering up your golf swing, getting your distance back, or increasing your distance. And as we get older, we naturally get tighter. If we're inactive, the muscles will become tighter. If you're active, the muscles will become tighter, because when you strengthen muscle, you tighten muscle. And unfortunately, a lot of people neglect the flexibility part of a fitness program. You got cardio, you got strength, and you got flexibility. And a lot of people focus on the cardio and the strength, and, they don't really stretch. So, and they're doing themselves, more harm than good, to be honest with you, because again,
right.
It's these, when you don't stretch, you get these imbalances in the body, and it just wreaks havoc on the body. So that will detract from your ability to swing an efficient golf club, to make that good shoulder turn, to initiate the downswing with the hips and all that kind of stuff. So definitely stretching is one. The second thing, as we get older, and everybody's going to incur this, is we face a condition called sarcopenia, which is an inevitable loss of muscle tissue, as you mentioned. And it starts at the ripe old age of 30, and when you hit 50, it just accelerates to the point where you're losing about a pound of muscle a year. Now, there's two types of muscle fiber. You have slow twitch and you have fast twitch muscle fiber. Fast twitch is responsible for quick, explosive movements in the body. So you're going to use more fast twitch swinging a golf club because it takes, 1.2 seconds to swing a golf club. Unfortunately, most of the muscle tissue we lose as we get older is from the fast twitch family. So you're losing the muscle fibers that you need to perform short, quick bursts of energy. So if you don't do anything, you're going to lose this muscle fiber, and there's a reason why you're losing distance as you get older if you don't combat that. So simple solution is to do resistance training, strength training, and you don't have to go crazy with it. 15 minutes a day, 3 days a week will suffice. But at some point, you also want to work with your trainer to start to implement some power speed type exercises, because that's the exercise that will help you recruit the faster twitch muscle fiber. So you definitely need to correct the imbalances. You need to get into a sport-specific strength program, and there are differences in the type of exercise that you do for golf. And then don't stop there, but progress. And you got to crawl before you walk, and then walk before you run. So correct the deficiencies, get into the strength exercises. And then at some point you can start to introduce the power and speed exercises to help you recruit those faster twitch muscle fibers, or at least the ones you have left.
Right. Now, let me just ask you, obviously I'm in my 50s, and I can definitely see a difference. I keep myself pretty active, but obviously, nature at some point takes over. So inevitably, obviously, we're going to lose as age and time creeps up on us. We're going to lose a lot of that muscle, but there are things that we can do to slow the process down and not necessarily reverse it, but combat it, as you said, and some of the suggestions that you make. But inevitably, there's going to come a point in time where you're not going to be able to outrun that happening. Is that correct? Would that be safe to say?
Yeah, I mean, when you get into your 80s and 90s, I'm 60, and it's kind of funny because I play with these guys from Greensboro, and a couple of them are younger than me, and they're, not that I'm bragging or anything, but, I started playing golf with them again, and they're playing from the gold tees. And I'm like, what are you doing from the gold tees? And I'm like, well, we can't hit the ball as far. And I said, well, age is not an excuse. They don't really do anything, so I'm trying to convince them that they need to get into some exercise program. But age is no longer an excuse. These guys, I've worked with guys in their 80s, and once you identify and correct, and for a lot of golfers, it is range of motion flexibility, and in a relatively short period of time, I'm talking like 3-4 weeks, they're coming back saying, I'm 10, 15, 20, more yards down the fairway. So, it will catch up to us at some point, but you can really slow that process down quite a bit if you get with somebody who knows what they're doing and takes you through a progressive program.
Yeah, and just to add to that, Bob, I know that what you talked about earlier, a lot of, and I'm going to throw the men under the bus because I think that we're more guilty about it than the ladies are, but we tend to work more on strength training and that area of fitness, and even cardio, which are certainly good and work hand in hand, but I know for a fact that a lot of folks out there don't work on the other aspects, the stretching and that. You go into the gym and you'll see them, they'll maybe do one or two quick little stretches, or even when they do a warm-up at the golf course, they'll do a quick little stretch that somebody showed them, and then they're out there beating balls on the range or the practice tee, getting ready for their round, and sometimes not even doing that, and then they wonder why they're not playing as effectively. And I think this adds as a deterrent to a lot, especially some of our older golfers, but even some of the younger ones as well, that might be in their 30s, 40s, and 50s, because they're not really preparing, to execute those shots by doing a good stretch and warm-up routine. So just, again, and I know we don't have the benefit of the visual, and I'll certainly, again, we'll direct everybody to your website after the show to maybe follow up with this, but are there some things that golfers, and again, be mindful that many of the golfers out there today, we're all pretty busy, we don't have as much time. Are there some things that pre and post round that golfers can do that can help a little bit to make things better for them?
Oh, definitely. Right before the round, the dynamic stretching, meaning there's movement involved, is good to loosen up the muscles and to get you ready to go out there and play a round of golf. Who was it? Jimenez, with his videos of him doing his dynamic stretches. People kind of comment about the way he performs that, but actually those are good stretches to do. There's one good stretch on the website called the T-spine matrix, thoracic spine matrix, that will basically warm up the entire upper body, the mid-back, the shoulders. Those are key areas, especially for making a good shoulder turn, because most range of motion comes from the mid-spine, thoracic spine, not the lower spine. And then there's also some dynamic stretches you can do for the lower body as well. And the key also, Ted, is, a lot of people or the people that do stretch before the round, when you think about a lot of public golf courses where 5 and 6 hours is kind of the norm, they should also stretch while they're out on the golf course waiting to hit their next shot.
Yeah.
And a lot of these stretches you can do on, while you're waiting out there on the fairway. There's a couple of videos of golf cart stretches you can do to keep you loose during the round, because, you stretch at the beginning, you hit a shot, you wait 5 minutes, you're going to tighten up out there. And that's when, you increase the potential for injury. So definitely stretch before and during, and, if you could get the time, in between your beers after, to stretch afterwards as well.
Yeah, and also too, I think that's something, and I'm sure you advise a lot of your clients over the years. I think another key element as well that a lot of people overlook is keeping yourself well hydrated throughout the round. It's amazing, people don't think about it. Obviously down here in the South, we got a lot of heat down here, but even in climates that maybe aren't as hot right now, maybe up in the Northeast, that haven't quite got up to those steaming temperatures yet. You get out there and play 18 holes of golf. You're out there, as you say, depending on where you're playing, could be anywhere from 4 to 6 hours. And if you're not keeping yourself hydrated, that's also puts some stress and strain on the muscles as well, correct?
Oh, gosh, yeah. And, it's not just the temperature that you want to be mindful of. You definitely want to take into consideration the humidity levels and the heat index. The heat index is a combination of temperature and humidity, because you don't really need high temperatures to get yourself into a situation where you may be dealing with heat cramps and heat exhaustion. If you have a day where it's in the mid-80s and the relative humidity is in the mid-80s to 90%, that's going to put you at risk if you don't stay hydrated, like you say. And the problem is most of us are walking around in semi-states of dehydration anyway. So what happens there is when you dehydrate, the volume, the water volume, most of it is taken out of the blood. So the blood volume decreases, and the blood becomes, kind of like oil versus water. Mm-hmm. And it's the blood that carries the oxygen and the nutrients around to the body. So if you have a less blood volume, you have less capacity to get that all-important oxygen to the cells of the body. So what happens is fatigue sets in some other fun stuff if you really kind of let it go. So it's important to make sure that you drink as much water as you can. The electrolyte drinks when you sweat, if you're a big sweater, I'm a big sweater, so you lose a lot of electrolytes, your potassium, your magnesium, your sodium. And so when you lose enough of the electrolytes, it can kind of mess up the electrical system in your body, and your body can start cramping up and all that kind of fun stuff. So, the sport drinks are good. The Gatorades, the Powerades, they'll definitely replenish the electrolytes. You just got to read labels because a lot of them have high sugar content. Another option is there's a bunch of electrolyte tablets out there. Noon is one of them that you just kind of plop the tablet in water, and it's like Alka-Seltzer. It fizzes, and you get all the electrolyte replacement, and in many cases without the sugar. So there are definitely options out there to help you stay hydrated, and, that's very important.
Yeah, and the reason why I mentioned that, and I certainly don't want to burst anybody's bubble. I'm all for having a cold, refreshing beer or whatever your drink of choice is around, during the round. You obviously want to go out and have some fun. But as you just pointed out, when you get out to a situation where you've got, heat index and humidity and that to deal with, you also have to, you're already at risk anyways, and then you compound it with alcohol. Of course, that dehydrates you even further. So, I'm not saying don't have a drink, a beer or two during your round, but make sure you're also that's not going to hydrate you. That's going to have the opposite effect. So you want to make sure you're drinking some water and making sure that you're getting a little something to eat throughout your round. Nicholas famously talked about in his video Golf My Way several years ago about how he kind of packs some snacks, if you will, throughout his round, so that gives him energy, throughout the 18 holes, because it's amazing how much energy and hydration, dehydration happens during an 18-hole game. And, the average amateur out there gets in a mindset where they're wanting to go out and have fun, and there's nothing wrong with that. But, you've got to be mindful for some of these things, because it's not only can it affect your round, but you can create other issues, especially if it's done on a continual basis throughout the summer. You can set yourself up for some worse times down the road, and this is where you want to make sure that you're speaking with somebody that's skilled in as I said, fitness and that can sort of guide you and better prepare you. We're not trying to say don't have some fun, but you need to be smart about it as well.
Hey, I'm one to have a PBR out there while I'm out there golfing as well. But another thing with that on the nutrition side of it is that you're out there 4, 5, 6 hours, and a lot of people don't realize the energy output in swinging a golf club. 90, 100, 120 times plus practice swings and plus a bucket of balls before you go out. So, the snacks are good, and things like a little PB&J is good because it gives you that carbohydrate that the body wants to utilize with activity, plus it gives you some protein, which will slow the ingestion of sugar into the bloodstream so that it lasts longer versus just having something that's a carbohydrate, which will kind of get in and get out. So, look for those energy bars that have some protein in them and stuff like that, and you should be good to go. Yeah,
and lay off the chili dogs and the greasy French fries during the round and this sort of thing. Certainly, I don't want to be jumping on my high horse here and saying you can't eat these things at all, but definitely not the best thing to be eating if you want to do your best. And the reason why I say this and why I want to talk about these things on the show, and I've mentioned it many times before, is, we, as a golf instructor, and I'm sure many of my peers, Bob, have been faced with the same questions. Well, what can I do for this and what can I do for that? And, they're always looking for a quick fix. And the truth of the matter is, if you want to become a better player, don't look for the quick fixes because they're not going to help you in the long run. You're asking for a Band-Aid when maybe you need, major surgery. So, I try to provide tips on the show that and sometimes they're hidden in messages and sometimes they're hidden in the dialogue that we talk about here, but I want people to really tune in and listen to some of the things that we're talking about on the show, not just tonight, but in other shows as well, so that people understand that there's more to the game than just hitting a well-struck golf shot. There's other areas. There's the fitness side. There's the nutritional side. And of course, there's actually playing the game, not just out on the practice tee. And I think that a lot of instructors get faced with the same problems, and I'm sure you see it as well in your side of the things, where a lot of folks, want this sort of magic solution or elixir, if you will, to improve their golf game. But they don't always follow through with some of the suggestions that we make to them. So this is why I keep hammering these things home and having great guests like yourself, Bob, come on the show to talk about these things, because this is an important part of the game as well. It's not just about hitting, as I said, great golf shots. It's about preparing yourself mentally and physically for that great round. And you'll have great rounds if you do that. Let's have a little bit of fun, and let's talk about Rory McIlroy. You sent me one of the points that we're going to talk about tonight, and in the form of a question is Rory lifting too much? Talk about what you mean by that statement, and then if you agree that he is, why you think he is.
Well, there seems to be a debate going on, about some of these pro golfers that are getting into the gym and, hitting the weights pretty heavy. And, I think there's definitely a window that you want to stay within, especially for golf. You definitely want to work on some golf-specific strength exercises. But I think, I may be in the camp of, Chambly, not Chambly, who's the announcer on the golf that says that Rory might be...
Frank Noblo? Is it him?
Noblo, and there are a couple others. But anyway, I think I'm in the camp that he may be lifting too much. And obviously his performance hasn't been there over the past year or so. I think there's definitely a limit. It's important to get into the gym. What you were saying about, you're just going to enjoy the game more because you will hit the ball better, further. You will score better. You won't hurt as, the day after, or, and even some good golf fitness instructors can help you alleviate the aches and the pains. But I think with golf, you definitely want to get into the weights. You just don't want to go crazy with them. And I think Rory, got a little bit too crazy with them. Because, again, when you strengthen muscle, you tighten muscle. So the more you kind of get into the heavy lifting, the more you definitely want to make sure that you're doing the stretching. Now, I don't know if I'm sure he's doing a lot of range of motion stretching stuff, but I think, I'm in the camp where I think he's just doing a little bit too much. Yeah,
and, I remember, when as an example, when Tiger first came out on the tour, obviously he was very lean and very lanky, and over time he got into a very regimented workout, and it was very evident in really short time that he bulked up. And there was a point where I felt, and again, I'm certainly not a fitness expert, but where, in my opinion, I think he got a little bit too bulked up. And golf is different. It's not like some other sports, whether it be football or even baseball a little bit, where you can be a little bit more, a little bit bulkier. But in golf, there's a threshold, as you pointed out. If you get too, bulked up or muscular, it can actually impede, especially in areas like the short game, because the muscles kind of get in the way. And that's why you don't see a lot of bodybuilders out on the golf course, successfully playing, on the PGA Tour, because their muscles just get to the point where they actually impede a good rotation and so forth. So, I agree.
It's such a finite activity. I mean, there's so many things going on in the body in a single golf swing. And, your body needs to be conditioned to accomplish that. and you need to have good balance, and you need to have good range of motion and flexibility. But yeah, I think if you go too far over to the right with the the lifting, I think that it can impact any one degree of that movement pattern. And golf, if you just change one thing a degree, it can screw up your whole swing. So I think you definitely need to be conditioned. The muscles need to be strong enough, but I don't think you need to really add too much bulk. Now, the thing with Tiger, and I think we've had this discussion before about Tiger, and I think there's other players on the tour that kind of fall into this category you don't hear too much about, especially with the injuries, is that we're coming, we're probably still in it, but, this age of specialization where kids are playing one sport and one sport only all year long, since they're young. And what happens when you do that is you develop a particular set of muscle groups in a particular movement pattern. And in golf, you're swinging a club from one side over and over and over again. And, for every swing we take from the right side, we should ideally take one from the left to keep balance in the body. But that doesn't happen. So over time, you develop these imbalances that, as we talked about previous, leads to misalignment, which eventually leads to injury. And so I think, with, Tiger and, Michelle Wee and, even Sergio, even Phil with the back a couple of years ago, I think it just leads up to the potential for injury. And that's another good reason to make sure you get to somebody who knows what they're doing and go through a screen so that they can identify where you are out of whack and so that they can kind of correct you and bring you back into balance.
Yeah, and I agree with that. And, there's so many things, obviously Tiger's really struggling right now. He's had some injuries. He's been very athletic for many, many years. And when you're an athlete like he is and you sustain a lot of these injuries, it's very difficult, and especially golf, because you're generating a lot of torque in your body. And I don't want to be. I don't like to predict people's futures, but there's going to come a point in time he's going to have to make a decision whether he wants to keep going down this path or not, because he's had, I think the count now, if I'm not mistaken, is 3 or maybe 4 back operations. Of course, he had the knee operation, I think, a couple times, and for him to be able to accomplish what he wants to accomplish at that level. And I'm sure he's had this conversation to himself. I would assume he has. But there's going to come a point in time where, inside Tiger, he's going to have that conversation. If I continue down this path and continue sustaining these injuries, is it going to get to a point, and it probably already is on some level, where it's going to be permanent? And I look at it this way, even if Tiger, and I'm not saying that he needs to go and retire tomorrow, but he needs to really, given the fact that he's had substantial injuries here of late over the last few years, there's going to come a point in time that if he doesn't make that decision, he's going to really pay for it. And I'm sure on some level he will anyways down the road when he does.
For it already. He's paying
sure,
for it already.
Yeah, on some level, but he's still pretty healthy. And I'm not talking about his golf game. I'm just talking about physically. I know people that have sustained injuries earlier on, and they kept pushing through these injuries, and surgeries later, and that sort of thing. And then when they get into some later points in their life, suddenly they're inflicted with a lot of arthritis and things like that, and they're just miserable. And I would hate to see that for him. Tiger has accomplished so much already that if he walked away from the game tomorrow, he may not get Nicklaus's, major record. He may not break that, but he's accomplished so much already in his career that he certainly would have nothing to be ashamed of. And I don't think anybody with half a brain would begrudge him doing that if they considered what he's potentially going to do to himself if he keeps going down this path. And that's just my thought.
Yes. Yeah, no, I agree with you. And The thing is that, whether it's golf, whether you play tennis, whether you participate in other activities, or even if you're just interested in general overall health, you want to be pain-free. And the important thing there is, again, I've been in this field for a long time, is you've got to make sure that your body, your musculoskeletal system is in balance. That is so important for whatever activity you participate in, or you just want to feel good. And it's important to make sure, and that's what exercise should be doing for you. It should be keeping you in balance, not being able to stand on one foot for 10 seconds, but keeping the musculoskeletal system in balance so that you move efficiently and so that you keep the body in alignment so that you don't create these aches and pains that, unfortunately, a lot of people suffer from. The low back
and you're
prime example.
Yeah, lower back is something that a lot of golfers, some of us have been pretty lucky. I've, touch wood. I'm looking for some wood here. I've been very fortunate that I've had very, very little issues with my back. Occasionally I've pulled a muscle here and there, but very, very limited. And I know others that are, have chronic back issues, and I understand that some of it can be a little bit hereditary in that, but I've been very, very blessed in that area. But, that's something that golfers need to be careful of, and doing some of the things that you talked about earlier can help, making sure that you're stretching properly, your whole body, not just certain parts of your body, but all of your body. Make sure you're getting some good stretches in, both before and even after the round a little bit. And there's times, when you're at home, there's no excuse. You don't need to go to the gym to do it. There's a lot of stretches that you can do. Bob, I want to thank you for coming on. We're just winding down here the last minute or two, so I want to give you an opportunity to, again, let the folks know where they can visit your website and maybe reach out to you if they're interested, and not just the general audience tuning in here, but I know there's a lot of golf professionals that tune into the show, maybe if they're interested in working with you or getting some good tips and advice from you, maybe there's a relationship here that can be developed. So how can they do that, and how can they get in touch with you?
Well, sure, yeah, thanks, Ted. And we were just getting going there. I'd like to talk some more, especially we just tapped into low back, and you're talking about muscle and balance. So that's for another show. But that's
for
again,
sure.
A lot of times the muscle, the mechanism that leads up to back issues is often overlooked, and that's the muscle imbalance. But anyway, yes, they can go to my website. As you mentioned, it's Golf Fit Carolina, 1F1T, GOLFIT Carolina. There's a bunch of articles on there. There's a section, I got a module about swing physiology and swing faults and the correlations to the physical deficiencies to those swing faults and what people can do, what they can do to correct those deficiencies. I have a book. It's called Functional Golf Fitness Training, and they can find that on Amazon or at the Book Patch, the hard copies at the Book Patch. I've had a lot of teaching professionals write me about the book because they found it to be a good teaching tool. They've added a lot of the information in the book, and it's an easy read, but it kind of gets into the more common deficiencies that I've seen in golfers over the years, how you can assess and then how you can correct those deficiencies. So it's Functional Golf Fitness Training at the Book Patch or Amazon. And then, I love talking about this topic, as you can tell.
Mm-hmm.
So if people want to call at 336-509-4610. And as you mentioned, my email is bob@golffitcarolina.com.
Perfect. Bob will definitely have you back on the show for sure. We'll continue this conversation. It's one that really there's so many variables that we can have. And I don't think I'm not sure how long you've had the book out for. I would love if it wouldn't be too much trouble. I would love if you've got an extra copy that you could send my way. I would love that, and I can email you my address and that. If you've got an extra one, if not, I'll. But But Bob, it's been a pleasure as always, and I'm glad to have you back on the show. It was funny, as I mentioned earlier, folks. Bob had reached out here recently through social media, and literally, I think it was about a day before, or maybe 2 days before, you had actually sent a note through. I was actually thinking about you. I thought, Bob hasn't been on the show for a while, and here you are. So I was glad that you reached out and that we reconnected. So, Bob, you're always welcome to come on the show. You know that, and I may, if your schedule permits, I may even squeeze you in if you're willing to get into maybe some Coach's Corner again. I know you've been on that before. We'd love to get your thoughts and insight into some of the discussions that we have. So if you're available, I'll send you a copy of the schedule, and you can let me know if that works. But, Bob, thank you as always for joining me on the show. Again, it's always a pleasure. I enjoy our conversations. And I will send you an email with my address and so forth. But if you've got an extra copy, I'd certainly love it. But welcome back anytime, and I appreciate you for. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I'll definitely send you a copy, and it's been a pleasure. I enjoy this. I mean, it's good information to get out to the public and to the professional levels, because it's important, and it definitely will help them not only in golf but in just the way they feel. So I appreciate the opportunity to talk about it.
Anytime. That's what the show is all about, is sharing, exchanging information with not just the general audience out there, but also my fellow golf professionals, instructors, coaches, and so on and so forth. This is how we exchange information on the program and help a lot of the golfers out there that maybe are struggling. These are some things and tips that they can take with them and get more enjoyment and fulfillment out of the game. So on that note, Bob, thank you very much again for joining me on the show tonight, and I will be in touch with you shortly. And I look forward to having you come back on again, and we'll continue the conversation. Have a great weekend.
That'll be great. You too. Thanks, Ted.
All right. That was my very special guest, Bob Forman, Certified Golf Fitness Instructor. And again, he's been on the show many, many times. Also, a special thank you to Jon Decker and Brandon Stooksbury for rounding out the Coach's Corner panel tonight. Did a great job, as mentioned, guys. And appreciate all of your thoughts and input into the show as well. And I want to, of course, take this opportunity to thank all the listeners worldwide for faithfully tuning into Golf Talk Live each and every week. And it's with great guests like Bob and John and Brandon on the show that really have helped to make this show a fantastic one, in my opinion. And they're just some great coaches and teach professionals and authors and entrepreneurs and fitness instructors. And it's really them stopping by that helped to make the show first class. And a special thanks to some of the sponsors and supporters of the show. Jonathan Laird from South Coast Golf Guide. Go to southcoastgolfguide.com to get a copy of your guide. It's some great golf courses here in the southeastern part of the United States. Meredith Kirk. Go to meredithkirk.com. Nikki and Tiffany Litherland, thanks for all of your help spreading the word. Mr. Bernie Pinder from onticgolf.com. Check his site out as well. Great customized putters there. Sean Kelly, owner of linkedgolfers.com, and of course Mr. Peter Doyle from Doyle Golf Solutions over in Ireland. Thank you, my friend, for always being a loyal follower and supporter of the show. And on that note, I will see you next Thursday. I believe it's June 29th at 6 p.m. Central right here on Golf Talk Live. Thank you, everybody. Have a great weekend, and God bless.